Okay, so here we are with double pointed needles. You know, they have points on each end. And when casting on, you can cast on however you like. I like to cast on a bunch of stitches on one needle and then slip some of those stitches onto the other needles. And, you know, you can keep casting on if you've only got, not, you know, if you're not doing all of the stitches onto one needle. If that won't fit, then you can just keep going onto another needle. Now, I'm not going to keep going because, like, you could cast on, like, 90 stitches for a hat or something like that. If you want to do a hat with double pointed needles, I would just use a circular, but that's just me. So let's say I would go to the other end. So here's the end with the tail. I would take another needle and slip. Let's pretend I have like 30 stitches on this needle. So let's put 10 stitches. Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 stitches on this needle. And then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on this needle. And then there would be 10 on this needle. Let's run, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. Let's just pretend. So here's your needles. And now it depends on what you're knitting. If I'm knitting just a sleeve that's, you know, everything's the same size, then, you know, like maybe 50 stitches for the sleeve, right? And that would be fine. If I'm doing a sock, I would have in the middle. So here's the middle needle. This is how I would orient my needles. Here's the tail. This is the one with the tail. This is the one with that's attached to the ball of yarn. So I would have 3 needles, and the one is considered in the middle of the stitches. Like I would have, in my frame of reference, if I'm knitting a sock, the middle needle is going to hold the stitches that are on the top of the heel of the foot, and then the two on the bottom the bottom part of the heel would be, you know, this would be a quarter of the stitches, this would be a quarter, and that would make the other half. So this would be half, and these two would make half. And it makes a nice little triangle, so I know what I'm doing. You don't have to do it that way. That's just me and my weird brain, how my brain works. Um, or you could just do them, you know, symmetrical. Just every needle has the same number of stitches. It's totally personal preference, unless, you know, the pattern tells you to do something different. And then once you have all of your stitches and all the little bumps are lined up exactly the same way, so you're not twisting your stitches, you would join to knit in the round. So you would have your working yarn this way, because that's the way you knit, and your little tail sticking out here. So you would take your right hand needle, slip the stitch off the left hand needle. You take your right hand needle, slip the left hand needle off, and then you would go into this last stitch that you cast on into the front as if you're binding off, and then pull that over this stitch. And you kind of have to hold on to it so it doesn't fall off. Pull that over. And now they're crossed. So this was the stitch that was over here. This was the stitch that was over there. And now they're joined. And you have, you know, you didn't decrease anything. You didn't increase anything. They're the same number of stitches. And then to start knitting, you just go into that stitch and just start knitting. And the first stitch, when I'm knitting in the round, is gonna be loosey-goosey right here in this corner. So I just give it a nice tug right? So you don't get any weird ladders that form in that little corner. And then you just start knitting. And when you're using double pointed needles, you're only using 2 needles at a time. These 2 needles are just waiting for you to finish what you're doing so you can start knitting with them. So, you know, just like knitting flat. Ugh, I'm knitting in a very awkward position. That's why this is really weird. You get to the end of this needle and you just pull it out. Huzzah! And now you have a free needle. So you pull these up so they don't fall off, and then you turn to the next needle and start knitting the next needle. And that's it. And you just keep going around and around and around. When you finish, you know, when you finish one needle and you have a free needle, you just turn and go to the next. And you tighten that little corner, right? So you don't get any little gaps. And you just keep going around and around, and it just becomes this lovely, meditative, only knit stitch thing. There's no, I mean, there is purling. You can do knit one, purl one for ribbing, but in terms of like knitting a whole sweater, it's all just knitting. It's just so meditative, and it's just a big circle, right? I mean, yes, it's a triangle technically, but you're knitting in the round. It's a round shape that ultimately, you know, ends up with what you end up with.